So a common question that I get asked is basically, I own a home and I'm planning to sell it. How does it work when it comes to taxes? So the quick answer is there is no tax. It's tax exempt normally for your main residence or your home. But there are certain situations that could affect the tax implications. The first question that we should really be looking at is what is considered your home. First things first is that your personal belongings are in the actual house. Your address is situated in that house. So you got your license, you got your mail going to that address. You also have your family living in that address. And there are services that you're using in that house. All those factors shows to the tax office that that is your home. If you do decide to sell it one day, it is normally tax exempt. But because you live in the home for quite a long time, a lot of changes could happen, and as a result of those changes, it could actually affect the tax exemption status of that home. So let me jump into a few of those that are most common in this situation. So the first common situation is that you generate income using your home. So assume that you've had a property for 100 square meters and you've rented out one room, or you've generated income from that one room for your business, and that one room was 20 square meters of that 100 square meter property. Normally with the tax office, they'll look at that and they'll say, no, you don't actually entitled to a full exemption of your property if you do decide to sell. You're only entitled to a partial exemption now. So basically, that 20 square meters is 20% of that property. And as a result, you will have to pay tax on 20% of the profit of that sale of that home, and that whole 80% of that property will be exempt. Another scenario is basically when you decide to move out of the property. So assume that you move out of the property and you don't move to another property that you actually own. There's something called a 6-year rule. Basically, if you don't decide to elect another property to be your home, you can still keep this property as your home for 6 years. And if you do decide to sell it 3 years later and you haven't had another home, then you can actually still consider the whole property as tax exempt and you don't have to worry about capital gains tax. Another scenario is if you are a non-resident of Australia. So if you're a non-resident of Australia and you own a home in Australia, unfortunately, you don't get that CGT, capital gains tax exemption when it comes to you buying and selling your property. There are situations when you're owning a property and you've lived in it for a couple of years or 5 years and you decide that you want to move to a new home. There is sometimes a time period where you're actually owning 2 homes. The tax system allows you to only elect one property as your home at one given time. Sometimes you would have this property, let's just say the first home, for 3 years, and you decide to move out of it in the 3rd year. And then you decided to keep that home for another 2 more years. What happens in this case is that it was your home for 3 years and the other 2 years it was an investment property, or it was just sitting there and it wasn't your investment property, but you had another home that was considered your home. And when you do decide to sell that property, you have to portion part of that sale or part of the profits that you've made on that property as taxable, and some of it will be exempt. So for that 3 years that you were living in there, it will be exempt. For the 2 years that you were out of that property and you had another property that you considered your home, the 2 years will be taxable. So 60% of your profits that you make on that property is exempt from tax, and the other 40% will be taxable. So owning your own home, there are a lot of good tax implications, but depending on the situation, it could be taxable, or you could have some portion of your property that when you sell is taxable. So you got to be very careful of it, and it's best to speak to an accountant or tax expert and work out what the situation is before you actually make that move of moving out of your home or renting out your home or making some money of your property.